You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with me today is our director and editor, Mark Carroll. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
So, middle of December, and we have a lot to cover. Now, we've gotten rid of Dr. Joe Venosa, right? He's off doing exams, right?
Is that where he is?
That's what he says he is. I think the question is, do we miss him much?
We're about to find out.
No, I do miss him. So he's out giving exams to students, probably making them sweat it out right at the end to get a good grade. But thanks for coming in.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. It wasn't a very long walk, so.
No, just from the other side of the camera, right? So yeah, we do have a lot to cover, but I also think we have some pretty exciting news in your world. Tell us a little bit about what happened this past Saturday.
Oh, I was elected as one of the commissioners of Sharptown.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you. Sharptown has 5 commissioners, and I am now one of them. So.
Well, and how long have you been the director of Parks and Rec, that volunteer position there?
About 5 years.
Okay. So what do you think some of the challenges are, Sharptown? I mean, not bad necessarily, but what do you hope to get accomplished next few years?
I really thought of it.
Yeah, I bet you do a lot of listening first, though, won't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I already go to a lot of the town meetings anyway, just to make sure that the Parks and Rec information is being passed along. So, just really looking forward to, whatever issues coming up, being on that side of the table and being able to, help the town as much as I can.
I think you'll be a great addition. Politics aside for a minute, I think your ability to level with people without big words, without being misinformed yourself, I think you'll do really well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So let's talk about information. We're going to start today with Salisbury City Council. It probably seems like maybe that's very one-sided, but this is actually going to affect everybody in the Wicomico County, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in the first segment.
Okay.
So back in November, the Planning and Zoning had a hearing, a very long hearing, and the videos are still on Pack 14. This hearing was to increase the property density in the central business district from 40 units an acre to 80 units.
So is that what downtown is, the central business district?
Yes, and it's outlined. If you go into the government office building, there are maps there. I'm sure if you go over to the headquarters, the city of Salisbury there's maps there. But basically what we consider downtown.
Yeah. That they're discussing increasing it. Is that what they want?
Well, so here's where we're at. A year ago, the developer Brad Gillis, they want to put in a lot of apartments. They're saying market level apartments, luxury apartments downtown, where the parking lots are now.
Sure.
They went to get an exception and were turned down, and they actually appealed that exception to Judge Jackson, and he also threw it out. And at the time, they wanted to go to 77 units.
Okay.
So the different route is they actually went this year to get a text amendment change to the Planning and Zoning Code.
Yeah.
And this code is shared by both the county and the city. We only have one Planning and Zoning Commission for for both governments. On that commission, you have City Council President Deshaun Dowdy, Wicomico County Councilman Joe Holloway, and then you have 5 other members. So, and many of those members are also members of the Greater Salisbury Committee. Greater Salisbury Committee did some research and they wrote a white paper in favor of it. The city staff report came out against it. So in this long meeting, the city staff report was read. A lot of testimony was given by both people for it and against it. I think most people were actually against it, but the developer was obviously for it, and a lot of their associates.
This is interesting. I have some questions, actually. Not very many people know that I lived downtown for about 3 years. And back then, there were logistics issues. And I'm curious if any of these have come up in these meetings. For starters, when I lived downtown, parking was a problem. And this was 20 years ago. It was a problem then. The other issue was something you would never think of, but it was trash removal. And I think they have solved it. But when I lived downtown, we didn't have waste disposal. So we would have to collect all of our trash in plastic Walmart bags and then dump them on the plaza and then get yelled at by city employees. But we didn't have anywhere else to take our trash. And I think there's something, they worked something out with that where there's like dumpsters residents can take trash to. But in this plan here, did they say anything about building their own parking or having their own?
So there was a traffic study done several years ago, but it was done by the developer.
Oh,
And a lot of questions have been raised about that, about the validity of that. Now, there will be another traffic study done, but if this passes, and that's where we're at with this work session, this is actually the city council still has to pass it. But if this passes, there will be another traffic study done. The city of Salisbury has one lot that is designated for a parking garage. Now, this parking garage is not bonded, so it's not guaranteed that it's going to be built. But we had Randy Taylor on last week, and he actually spoke about the maintenance costs per year just to have the parking garage in the neighborhood of $400,000 to $500,000 a year, not counting building the garage.
so this is a new garage. It's going to supposed to service this building. Is that correct?
Well, part of it. So this new garage would have about 450 spaces, all of which would be used by current permit holders and the new residents of this development. So there's not a holistic parking or traffic plan done. And Randy Taylor actually spoke in detail about how this will put some strain on services. Now, he talked about education and he talked about fire service, but you talk about trash service. That was not brought up in the Planning and Zoning Committee, so I don't know.
Yeah, this garage that may be built. Is it adjacent to the property or is it close by?
Yeah, it's pretty close by.
Okay.
But if you're a county resident and you're on jury duty, or you want to go down and pull a permit or pay your property tax bill, your parking is going to be impacted by a decision that is going to be made by the Salisbury City Council starting this Monday. So it's the first reading. There'll be a second reading in January. Now, by the rhetoric we've heard from the work sessions, this is almost guaranteed to pass. It's either going to pass 3-2 or 4-1. But the thing is, if it passes 3-2, then it will, or if it passes either way, it has to go to Randy Taylor's office for signing or veto. At a 3-2 passing, this theoretically could go to Randy Taylor's office, be vetoed, and 3-2 is not enough to override the veto. So this is definitely one of those situations where even the slightest input from the public, whether you're a city resident or a county resident, could swing this one way or another.
So on the low end, before they do the density increase, is there a plan for how many units would be in there if they didn't get the larger?
So there are two other examples. One is another parking lot that's already set to be developed, and that development is set at the 40 units per acre allotment. They're high-end units. That developer actually spoke at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. I think they would love to have added more, but they're going to proceed with the plan they have. Interestingly, over near the hospital, there's another parcel that is in this same area, and it has been approved above capacity, but through the exception. They went to Planning and Zoning. Here's the key. They have their own parking.
Yes.
So that was really where the rubber met the road for the Planning and Zoning initially. Planning and Zoning is different from from the committee that gives out exceptions. It was the parking.
Is this lot you're talking about, is it on the other side of Carroll Street, like on the hospital side of Carroll Street?
So the one that has the expanded density is on the other side, towards the hospital. The one that's already, it's going to have the lower density is on the Circle Avenue.
Sure. Well, and that makes sense, being outside of Carroll, because being, downtown, living there and working there for a number of years, I have seen the traffic patterns, and if something is to be built on the outside, it wouldn't impact the downtown traffic as much as something built where they would like to build it. I've seen traffic backed up down Market Street all the way back up Carroll, just trying to get through the light on Mill Street. So.
Yeah, no one's going over to the hospital walking all the way across the river to go to jury duty.
No.
But the parking lots you're using right now near Unity Square are not going to be available. That's going to be the area that's developed. So
okay.
So if you'll stick around, I want to go over some of the county council agenda items. That's for the very next day, the Tuesday. There's quite a bit of important information on there.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll stick.
So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to do a rundown of the agenda from the County Council meeting on Tuesday, December 17th, and give you an update on just a few of those votes as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with me still is Mark Carroll, Town Commissioner from the town of Sharpton.
Yes, I guess so. Well, I haven't been sworn in yet, but
okay.
Maybe by the time this airs,
I think Town Commissioner-elect.
Yes, that's right. I think that's the official title.
That's a lot of hyphens, though.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. That was my favorite bumper, by the way, that we just played before this segment. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about the actual the legislative session for the county council. Now, the Salisbury City Council we covered earlier is on Monday, December 16th at 6 o'clock. The county council is the next day. It's a 10 a.m. meeting. They're both in room 301, same room. Okay, I guess you could stay overnight if you bring a pillow.
How are the accommodations?
Not very good, I don't think. It's either really hot or really cold in there, I feel like. But there's a few very important public hearings. One, and we've heard this come back up several times. This is a public hearing for Legislative Bill 2024-12. This is to add Chapter 99 to the Wicomico County Code titled County Vehicles, or Vehicles County, actually. I think that's the way it's titled. This actually came up first a year ago. This was in a work session with the county executive, the director of administration, Bunky Loughlin, and the entire county council. And the issue there was that there was not a high standard, not an even standard for vehicle usage throughout the county. Even things like logos.
Sure.
I think. It's,
so there wasn't any consistency across the like you'd have some county vehicles with no branding, and then others with maybe one small logo, and then others with two. So there's just no.
It wasn't uniform.
Right. No brand consistency.
Not at all.
Okay.
And not maybe and also too, just even how you budget for the lease agreement. So right now the leases are just done as a line item. And
so they don't know what department is using what?
Not right now. Oh. Now, I'm sure the county executive's office has a list of the vehicles and they know what department it is. But from a budget control standpoint, you have no control.
Okay.
Or all of the Parks and Rec vehicles all of a sudden in another department, we don't actually know. Not saying there's anything wrong, but just to standardize it.
Is that just for leased vehicles? Is that right? Is that
it's even assigned vehicles now are known by their department, but the lease set it's just done as an overall budget number. Also standardizing who's allowed to use them and when, under what circumstances. This is the public hearing. They've had work sessions. They're going to still be more discussion. And I think if this is something that you feel strongly about, you should come. There's a public hearing about the FAA lease for the old terminal building. It's probably a pretty standard thing with the airport. But then there's also a public hearing, and I think you and I can speak to this from our experience as youth sports directors. A letter of support for a Class B athletic and event facility license in Wicomico County. There's really only one facility right now that comes to mind that this would fit, and that's Crown Sports in Fruitland. The letter of support is because in order to get any type of changes done to the liquor bills, they have to be done in Annapolis. So this is a letter of support supporting our delegation to take this to Annapolis to get this. This is one of 3 bills that are going to be introduced this winter on the behalf of Wicomico County that involve liquor licenses.
Wait, this is so that they can serve alcohol at a sports facility, like a children's sports facility?
Yes.
Where, I'm sorry, that just caught me off guard. How is this a good idea?
Well, let's just speak from the ref standpoint.
Yes.
I mean, we're having.
We've both been officials.
We've both been certified to be officials and been officials.
And we've done that, and it can be challenging. I can't imagine doing that if the parents are even a little bit intoxicated. They're already sometimes,
Well, one of the most nerve-wracking things for me sometimes is when different parent groups aren't getting along. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we all showed up for the kids, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if we're going to go to a party, we're going to do it later or another day. But for that moment, we're supposed to be there for the youth sports. This does not seem like these two things should mix, right?
No, and you and I, we've been coaches, we have been program coordinators, and we've been officials, as I mentioned. And I go back to the very first thing that when we went through our officials training was, what is your number one priority?
Safety.
Player safety.
Yeah, player safety, 100%.
Yeah.
And also, you and I spend a lot of our time with our volunteers, building them up. At the end of the day, a coach for one of our Division II teams, which is second and third graders, they're usually a parent who knows a little bit about the sport, but more importantly, is just willing to show up.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine if they have to deal with an angry parent, whether it's from their own team or the other team who's maybe had a few? I mean, this would be a dynamic shift in the wrong direction.
Are we 100% in, like, this is actually what this is? We're not misreading this? Like,
no,
this is what it is?
No, there's always been a little murkiness to these. Even last year when they passed the first liquor bill to dissolve the monopoly for the Wicomico County Dispensary, it initially went to the county council, not as a bill, but as a legislative resolution. It was brought up that there was concerns about there being changes made once they got to Annapolis. Then there was.
Yeah.
Now, they were able to curb this back. So the bill that got introduced was the one that just change it from shall to may, from buying from the dispensary, and allowed private distributors to come in and sell to restaurants. I actually think that's a great deal. But when they had the July 1st press conference, our former delegate Carl Anderton and our current county executive Julie Giordano stated at the press conference that they had just opened the door and we might as well walk through it. I think this is us walking through it, because one of the other bills is to expand liquor license for more stores basically in Wicomico County. I can't believe this is a positive.
No, absolutely not. Well, the other thing too is that the reason that we were taking those classes to get our officials training is because there is not just here, everywhere, a nationwide shortage of referees, umpires, officials for all sports and all youth sports. There's a huge shortage. So we did this. You and I participated. We had some of our more mature, older players,
teenagers,
participate in this as well, so that they could get service hours or payment, whichever they chose. But they would do the little kids games. Point being, we needed to look outside of the normal means to have enough referees to run our programming. This does not seem like it's going to encourage people to want to become a referee if they know that they might have to officiate a game where alcohol is being served.
Well, at this public hearing, there will be a chance for the public to speak. This is not public comments necessarily. This is a different chance. Richard Duvall, who is the attorney for the liquor board, will be there. I can tell you, there's politically, there's a lot of politicians who'd like to see this passed. I think if we polled volunteers, coaches, parents, I don't think there's a lot of support. But I can promise you, if we don't show up and we don't express our dismay and maybe even our concern for this, not just for one circumstance, but in the long term, this would have a huge negative impact on youth sports in our area.
100%. Yeah. What is the date of that again?
So this is on Tuesday, December 17th. It's a 10 a.m. meeting.
10 a.m.
But I'm going to give you one other way to get your voice heard. Go to wicomicocounty.org. Look up the county council, okay? Every one of them has their email address and phone number. I will tell you, I think it's easier to send an email, and you don't have to just send it to your county council person.
Sure.
Our county council represents, all 7 of them represent the entire county. Yes, you have one in your district, and yes, there's 2 at large, but all of them do. I would send them, if I'm a parent out there, this would give me chills.
Oh, absolutely.
It gives me chills right now.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then even after this legislative session, and there's quite a bit, end of the year stuff, going to go through there. There's quite a bit on the open work session. And if you could stick around one more segment, I'd like to go through some of that because these works session topics are going to be legislative topics early in 2025.
Okay.
So when we come back, we're going to work through the work session topics and talk a little bit about what we can expect into 2025. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. Still in studio with me is Mark Carroll.
Yes, you didn't untie my legs.
No, you're tethered.
Stuck.
So we talked about the open work session items, and I think some of these are important because they're going to come back up in the budget meetings that we're going to see in April and May. The discussion with Randy Taylor, the mayor of Salisbury, about the Salisbury Fire Service. This was a hot topic last year. A large increase, but not even as much as they felt like they should get. And I think this is going to be important. The proposed 2025 legislative session, the priorities, and Bunky Loughlin, the director of administration, is going to speak about that. And then also the landfill 10-year comprehensive plan. We know our landfill is getting to the end of its useful life, and in our lifetime, that is going to have to be addressed.
So if anybody's interested in any of these things, they're going to break it down for people to get more information about.
Yes. If you want to find out exactly what the county council, the county executive is going to be talking about in the next 60 to 90 days, the work sessions are a good place to start. If you really want to get some of the background information and get a feel for how certain council members are going to vote.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the density earlier.
Yes.
And the Salisbury City Council meeting is Monday, December 16th at 6 o'clock. I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier as someone who lived downtown.
Sure.
Talk about just really what made your decision and where you ate, where you shopped, how you lived your life when you lived downtown.
Downtown 20 years ago was a completely different landscape than it is now. We tried to stay downtown as much as possible. It was difficult. Luckily, when we lived down there was when the sushi restaurant opened up.
Okay.
So I often tell people that I moved because otherwise I would have gone bankrupt from having sushi every night.
Every night, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what was you said it was difficult. What were some of the big challenges when you did live downtown?
Well, I mentioned the trash service. There was no trash service at the time. Parking could be an issue. You weren't always guaranteed to get a permit at the lot near your building.
Okay.
Which can be challenging if they want you to park in the garage and the garage is 4 or 5 blocks away from where you live. Some people don't feel safe walking around downtown after dark. And then just there wasn't a lot of places to do anything other than drink and eat.
Okay.
There weren't very many shops. Again, a problem that they have since done a lot better with. Just going around downtown now, there's gift shops, the ice cream shop, and just a lot more to do downtown.
So if you were still a resident downtown and you heard about this text amendment that is going to be voted on by the city council to actually double the density, I mean, how would you feel about that if you were already down there?
I'd be very concerned because one of the challenging things to do downtown is to get out of downtown or back in if you were out of it. Downtown is basically an island. If you have the branch of the Wicomico, and then you have 50 on the other side. And there's limited ways to get in and out between the one-way streets, and there's always seems to be a closure somewhere. Trying to figure out how they would, make all that work with all that additional traffic and people there. Because yes, there's gift shops, there's places to eat, places to have dinner, drinks, things like that. But you still have to go to Walmart. You still have to get, you still have to get out and get your groceries and do other things, normal citizens need to do.
Well, so you could speak about it as a resident. You and I are both small business owners. I mean, how would you feel if you were thinking about opening up a business downtown?
If I was, my business is downtown, but
on the outside, yeah, but on the edge. But yes.
I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge. Well, it's interesting. I have a perspective now that part of the reason that I kept my business downtown. I could have downsized and moved somewhere else, but I kept it downtown because of the other large residential building that was put in place there. And my reasoning was that if people were searching for my services, they would find it. The way that Google ranks is they'll show you the closest person. Well, yeah, I've been back downtown in my business for 4 years now, and I haven't had a single client from any of those buildings. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So from the outside, it seems like, oh, this would be great. I'm so much closer to all of these people. But as someone who is there now, I don't. For me and what I'm doing, I don't really see the benefit to it. Now maybe the other places like the restaurants, gift shops, bars, maybe it's more beneficial to them.
Well, you and I were talking at the break, specifically about the other plan development over on the hospital side, and how that process happened. Because I mean, they were granted an exception, and really it comes down to the parking, right?
Yes.
So, as a business owner, if you don't have enough parking, I mean, how's that going to affect your business?
That I recently moved my business downtown. I stayed in downtown, but I moved to a location that had its own parking lot because parking was a problem. That's
Okay.
how important it was to me. I moved my office to a building that had its own lot because there were times I would just need to run in my office quick, between calls, answer some emails or something like that, and I would pull up to the lot next to my building. It was full, and so I wasn't getting the benefit of the office because I could never get in there.
Well, if a client was going to drop off a computer,
Exactly.
and they don't have a place to park,
Exactly.
but somebody does outside the central business district, I mean, what's the chances that they're just like, you know what, I'm just not going to get to Mark Carroll's computer office?
Exactly. When you were talking about the exception on the outside, near the hospital, that makes more sense. That's why the exception exists. Trying to build a high density residential unit inside of the downtown footprint is why the rule was there to begin with.
Yeah.
The exception is there for the places that could sustain it. Like, oh, there's not anything near here. There's plenty of parking. The infrastructure can support it. We have roads that can support a building of this size. That's why the exception exists. It doesn't exist so that, someone can come up with this plan and then expect it to go through because they develop other things within the city or the county.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking about the traffic study earlier. There's also a study done by the staff about water and sewer that it just really depends on how you read it, but it definitely seems like we're maxing out the capacity for anything else down there. So
Oh, absolutely.
this text amendment did pass 6-1, and the only person to vote against it was Joe Holloway. The other members feel like, hey, you know what? Let's build it and we'll figure it out. So thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to have you back maybe after you've had some time to settle in over there at the Sharptown Town Council.
Sure.
I really want to hear about some of the challenges that towns like Sharptown or Hebron or Pittsville are maybe facing as we enter this budget deficit with the state level. We are anticipating major cuts to funding, possible tax hikes, and I think as every municipality, county government goes through those processes, let's just see really how it would affect a small town like Sharptown, right?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
All right, we'll have you back. Thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back next week with another new episode. We think Mark Carroll is the best editor ever.